very important. We hammer this in here, boom, boom, boom. Set again goals, and especially big goals. I believe even in these times, it also helps to develop momentum. Set big goals.
Today it's something different. The white gold.
Porcelain was also referred to as white gold. Nevertheless, relatively few coincidences happen because in the end,
Accidents and coincidences and accidents? Accidents, yes. You said coincidences? I did.
Random things.
Coincidences also happen to be random accidents, exactly. So the first example is still, I have to tell this beforehand, it's a resource example. My professor told it back then. With that, he initially made himself unpopular with many by proposing the thesis that there is an optimal crime rate. Can you imagine what was going on?
Hello, Interior Minister. Greetings, BrandTrust Life. Welcome, dear viewers, to a new episode of BrandTrust Live in our new year, where, as always, at the beginning of a year, we look forward with a mix of hope and tension, wondering what it will bring, especially a year like 2025, which is marked by major changes that are already foreseeable. And now, as strategists, we naturally ask ourselves, what value does our work actually have? Or put differently, how would it need to change to maintain its value in these times of ours? I would like to discuss this with my colleague, who has certainly experienced it as well, but naturally views it from a different perspective. And we have put the whole thing under a keyword, namely the beautiful, initially unpronounceable word, serendipity. We want to explore the whole topic under this theme, and now let's first talk about where it comes from, what it means, and what one should imagine it to be.
Charlene, it originally comes from a British writer named Horace Walpole, who coined it in 1754. In the 18th century, by picking up the Persian fairy tale, The Three Princes of Serendip, or Serendipity, which is the old word for Sri Lanka. And this Persian fairy tale is about the three princes embarking on a quest, a journey of knowledge, and on this journey, they discover many things they did not expect, things they were not looking for, but which result in many happy coincidences.
So now we have set the frame, and that serendip is the old word for Sri Lanka. This will surely also greatly please a valued colleague of ours. And from that, the concept of serendipity emerged. So it's already 250-50. Well, did I get it roughly right?
70.
70 years old and has now gained a bit of momentum. Because as mentioned, in the end, it's about not viewing chance as an adversary that disrupts planning, but rather appreciating it, loving it, and saying, hey, chance will be a part of our business. And perhaps the consequence is not necessarily to say I plan more short-term, but rather I plan long-term. But I essentially incorporate chance. I give it space to unfold. And we know, Shalina, there are some, one could say, inventions, groundbreaking inventions in human history that have come about by chance.
Penicillin is one such example. Fleming left a petri dish open and then noticed, after forgetting about it, that a mold had formed which killed the bacteria. And that was the discovery of the first antibiotic.
Before penicillin, there was porcelain. A pharmacist named Butcher tried to make gold with the help of alchemy. Of course, he didn't succeed in making gold, but he discovered porcelain. So the first European porcelain was discovered in this way, and then it came to Meissen, where he was imprisoned in the castle so he couldn't reveal the secret or escape, and the workers produced this white gold there. Today it's something different. Porcelain was also referred to as white gold. Parallel to a few thousand years later, China.
Something different now. Yes, porcelain. There's also the story of how our modern tires were actually invented by a Mr. Goodyear, who accidentally left rubber with sulfur on a hot plate, vulcanized it, and then realized that it had gained resistance through this chemical reaction. And that revolutionized the entire automotive industry.
So, embracing serendipity, giving a bit of space to chance, might make sense in today's world and can lead to special developments, discoveries, and changes that we all always hope for. The only question is, how can one implement something like that? You, as a strategist, when you have fearful, uncertain clients, which you also have, what do you advise them
Well, it helps to remind oneself why one originally planned for the long term. What is the benefit of it? And the benefit is that it gives me a lot of security. I have a plan. Now I know exactly what I need to do to reach my goal. Then, when the plan is fully written, we all experience that moment of happiness, and the feeling is already half accomplished. Now I just have to implement it. And now, in case of doubt, you naturally take this plan from them. And then uncertainty arises initially. Oh God, will I even manage it? That means what you must not take away is the first learning, which is the goal. Even if you don't fully execute the plan to the end, you still need to define the end point. Where do I actually want to go?
Very important. We emphasize this here. Boom, 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 once again. Goals, and especially big goals. I believe one should set big goals, as it also helps to develop momentum.
Exactly. So define the goal, and then now I'll jump back to the beginning. I still need a change in action at the beginning to move towards my goal. That means at the beginning, clearly define in detail what my first 10 steps are. Psychologically, this is also quite good. I can break them down into small enough steps that they are implementable in the shortest possible time to get into action. Once I've started, keyword how to eat an elephant, it becomes easier to continue both psychologically and in terms of planning, to do it cleanly and sensibly. Then comes exactly this phase, what do we do with the gap in between the goal and what I'm no longer planning precisely? And now many make the mistake of leaving it completely open and going into the open field saying, let's not define anything anymore and see what happens. Big mistake. We always advise against doing that. And what we do is, as you called it yesterday, define strategic lines to reach the goal. No linear planning with externals. No linear planning that leaves no room. But we always advise strategically within spaces of possibilities. That means we define a field within which this chance or unpredictability can, may, and even should occur. Do you encounter serendipity more often in your work life or in your private life? The first question is so difficult.
Yes, you must. Wait a minute. I'm getting there. Work.
Quick answer then. Okay. Do you think serendipity will increase or decrease in the modern technological age?
It will stay the same.
Is serendipity for you more of a happy coincidence or a happy mistake?
Oh, happy coincidence?
Would you rather find the best pizza in town by chance or the best coffee with the best coffee? Yes, that was clear. Chance or cosmic law?
Good question. Now I would say cosmic law.
Serendipity or luck? It depends on how you see it. Serendipity or being able to control everything?
Serendipity.
Surprise or exactly what I wanted?
Surprise.
All or nothing?
No. Absolutely nothing at all. And truly, in reality, stay curious.
Predict the future or perhaps time travel to the past?
Time travel, past. So planning can also be understood as a space of possibilities that needs to be limited, where you also need to clearly define the cornerstones. As mentioned, this can happen through principles or when getting closer to operations through rules. And that brings us to a brand trust essence, which I must say makes me a bit proud. Because when I developed the whole concept, at the end, it was about how do we make strategies take off? And back then, I also happened to have contact with a mathematics professor who deals with chaos, chaos research. And chaos in mathematics, in physics, in natural sciences always means unpredictable processes. So we are constantly living in chaos. When we walk out the door, we don't know what will happen. Therefore, from a scientific perspective, it is chaos. And he deals with how to make calculations in chaos, despite this unpredictability. Weather, for example, is such a topic. Weather is chaotic. You don't know how it will turn out. And these are all approximate calculations that lead to weather forecasts. And I learned from him, and it was so great, as I said in the RN, where the word serendipity already existed, but was by no means yet in the realm of perception. They use simple rules plus randomness. Very simple rules, very few, and then let randomness become part of the calculation. Well, and when I learned that moving within chaos is best done through simple rules plus randomness, it somehow clicked for me And I thought this is actually the ideal strategy translation move for brands. And how do you get a horde of people who are ultimately responsible for the formation of the brand, meaning all employees, all contributors, somehow aligned, which in itself is not really possible? Many try to solve this through central regulations and a lot of control. But that leads at most to addition. But no independent life emerges from that, especially no multiplication. And that's where I have this simple rule plus randomness. And then I thought, my God, this is exactly the right way to bring strategy, which is focused will, to the street. And since then, for well over 20 years, we at BrandTrust have been developing brand rules exactly according to this principle, which means very few simple rules, and then randomness. And I think a nice analogy that each of us experiences daily is traffic. In traffic, you have, I don't even know how many paragraphs in traffic law. No one knows them, no one is aware of them, and no one pays attention to them. Nevertheless, relatively few accidents happen because accidents are ultimately,
accidents and coincidences and accidents. Accidents, yes. You said coincidences. Did I say coincidences by accident?
Accidental accidents also happen, exactly. In any case, the reason that so little happens is not because we know all these paragraphs and adhere to them, but because we have reduced it to a handful of simple rules that we all know. Right before left, stop at the traffic light, pedestrians have the right of way at crosswalks, red paths are bike lanes. But these are no more than 2 handfuls, and they are completely sufficient to navigate this chaotic system of road traffic, relatively unscathed. And I think that it also makes a lot of sense on a corporate strategic level to describe these opportunity spaces with these few rules within which one can then joyfully indulge in experimentation and chance.
I would like to start by simply changing this image of chance, this connotation. That's the principle of serendipity, learning to love chance and not trying to avoid it. We have, I can't even explain why, always this urge to control and manage everything. You know, I also have some clients who want to predict every detailed case and then establish a set of rules. How to behave in this situation, or then define a process for it. And in my opinion, this always comes from the basic attitude that chance is bad, control is good. If I can master it, it's better. We also want to control because then I can predict what will happen. I cannot predict chance. It is associated with uncertainty. And now there are some examples of why it is not so. Not only from a resource perspective, sensible to try to eliminate this chance. So the first example is still, I have to tell this beforehand, it's a resource example, my professor told it back then, and with it, he initially made himself unpopular with many, with the thesis that there is an optimal crime rate. Can you imagine what was going on? Halli, Interior Minister, greetings. It exists primarily from a resource perspective, because what do you have in crime fighting? Of course, you have a curve. Exactly the cost function. This curve rises the more you try to reduce this crime rate. So the marginal cost function is increasing, the marginal benefit function is decreasing. In other words, each additional unit of crime fought has a diminishing additional benefit. So at the beginning, if you are in a completely anarchic system where the police establish some order, the benefit for you is still very high. Finally, I can go out on the street. And this additional benefit for you personally, when even the last drug lord has been eradicated, is comparatively lower. And if you already notice this in the logic, except in Bavaria, in this logic, and in Berlin, if I overlay this logic, then I realize that at some point, the costs outweigh the benefits. And from there, this optimum is reached. That means after that, it doesn't get better, and it's actually not sensible to continue dealing with crime, because the resources you would have to spend on it could be used more effectively elsewhere, as you are operating under scarcity.
The example of the crime optimum can seamlessly be transferred to a company. So how much controlling is the optimum? How much reporting is the optimum? How much process compliance is the optimum? And when everything is overdone, you end up in this diminishing returns scenario. We always say with these rules, we want to solve 80% of the incidents. Just like the 10 traffic rules we know can manage 80% of all situations. For the remaining 20%, that's where we exactly hit this diminishing returns function. There, you really need to know a lot of details. And many companies indeed make the mistake of wanting to manage, organize, and regulate even the last 20% in some form. And then they become paralyzed. And that's when we have the problem. And when we are navigating through highly chaotic times, you can't succeed with this rigidity. Instead, you should really reduce all your central functions to 80% and leave the last 20% to the genius of inspiration, randomness, creativity, and freedom, thereby naturally creating, as is often said, agile systems. And it is naturally more enjoyable for people to manage these challenges and not always have to look at the manual and follow a set pattern. What I believe one must do is trust. You say to learn to love chance, but that also means having trust in the unknown. And that also means having trust in your employees. This is less of a problem. In the medium-sized business environment, in corporations, it becomes a tight situation because everyone reports to everyone else. And in the end, you end up writing something in your business report that is no longer true, just between us. And then if I have the courage and the opportunity, I can just stop at 80% and let the rest happen. And we are curious to see what unfolds.
And the nice thing is, this letting things happen can lead to a better result than if you had controlled it yourself.
Usually you end up with a better one.
Usually it's even more positive than the prospects are better. I would like to briefly explain this with an example. I have, as you know, spent a lot of time with acting. And there, one topic kept coming up. Use the difficulty. There are also people who have applied this in job interviews. So you build some non-linearity into a predictable setting and then see how people deal with it. In the project, in the pro theater, exactly. But if you now know I'm supposed to come on stage soon and there's a drama happening, a scene, two people are talking, and I'm supposed to interrupt this scene somehow. So now I plan to open this door, come onto the stage, and suddenly there's a table in front of it. I can't get in. And then this actor, from whom I later heard an interview, said yes. And then he was like, hey, I can't get in. We have to interrupt the scene. Director freaked out. Use the difficulty. If it's a drama, smash the table or if it's a comedy, jump over it or whatever. And the beautiful thing is that you then trigger a stimulus response pattern where through an external stimulus that you have to process and then combine, you can suddenly create something completely new that was beyond your previous imagination. And that's where real innovation happens. I need to elaborate on that later. But what the learning was in this acting theme is that you can say every challenge, every difficulty is the chance to use it to make something better out of it. And if you adopt this change in perspective, chance becomes your friend.
Plan or idea?
Idea.
Away from or towards?
Towards
Stick to it or adapt?
Adapt.
Long term or short term?
Short term.
Future or futures?
Futures.
Scarcity or opportunities?
Opportunities.
Customer guidance or self-discovery?
Okay. What are you trying to tell me with that? Customer guidance.
So control or let them discover themselves?
How?
Control of the customers.
Oh, so whether I control the customers or they discover me more? Then self-discovery, of course, right? At the workplace.
Creative chaos or super clean? Super clean. Somehow goes together too. Standardized processes or room for surprises?
Both would be good. Standardized processes. And within them, room for surprises. But only room for surprises, then it's chaos, then you get nothing done.
Now the question of all questions, blind date or perfect dinner? There are also questions you don't have to answer. And we'll leave it at that. And that's how these incredible icons suddenly emerge in the brand business, which always seems so managed. These are very often the coincidences. An example comes to mind with your user difficulty. As you know, I am a confessed AC/DC fan, and one of the co-founders of AC/DC, who is still alive, still performs. Angus Young, the lead guitarist, has an iconic gesture closely intertwined with his persona. Let's call it that. Namely, he plays the guitar while lying down. So how did this iconic gesture come about? He fell off the stage. He was in his guitar solo, Kibi's Sen. Supposedly didn't see the edge of the stage. Probably drugs were involved too. Fell off the stage, and he was so embarrassed that he continued playing while lying down. And that was exactly it. It didn't stop. And that led to this signature. And if you go far back and look at a completely different country, in Japan, wabi-sabi, which glorifies the imperfect. For example, with old ceramics or ceramics that weren't optimally fired in the kiln, and then cracks form, and they fill these cracks with gold, thereby making these cracks valuable and emphasizing them. And also this randomness, because a crack actually destroys the idea of the ceramist and can sometimes bring the whole thing to an end. So if you develop a sensibility for it and take a closer look at where coincidences have surpassed, complemented, or directed human will, you can indeed develop a desire to love chance.
Well, I believe that almost all are truly great achievements. Let's speak in terms of innovation. Semi-radical to especially radical innovations have arisen by chance. Conversely, if you relate it to your life, I believe every great moment you've experienced, every truly outstanding, beautiful experience, I dare to bet, was not planned. The truly great moments in your life were not planned.
I can think of another nice example. A customer of ours, Stabilo, is famous for the Stabilo Boss, the highlighter, which they invented. And it's a somewhat flattened pen, actually a very peculiar shape. And I can tell you how it came about, namely also through serendipity. So it was clear they wanted a pen for highlighting, something that didn't exist before. And then a shape had to be found for this pen. In the past, models were made from clay plasticine or as modeling material. So they placed this clay model of the new pen on the desk of the then head of Schwann Stabilo. And there were books next to it. And he didn't like it at all. And he was an impulsive person and a native of Franconia. And he slammed the table, expressing that he simply found the model bad. In doing so, a book fell onto the model and pressed the plasticine. Then they lifted the book and thought, this looks good. That's how the shape of the Stabilo Boss was created. Shalina, this time I really put in a lot of effort. Now I'm curious to see if I can confuse you a little.
Confuse? Not upset.
No, the guys are also very curious.
They're nodding vigorously. Oh God, what is that? Hashtag. Women in male fields.
Yes. Have you heard of it?
Yes, the term has come up before, but it's not very prominent right now. I just keep thinking of the hashtag, things men have no business in. There's something funny to say about that. And there's a sentence I heard yesterday. I had to laugh so much. Explaining things I just explained.
I know that too.
So women in male fields, I would guess it's about women taking on male-dominated professions.
In a broader sense, you can take it that way. In a narrower sense, I mean, another chapter in the eternal gender struggle, which is somehow always our core theme in surprise topics, adopting male behaviors. And there's currently a trend on social media, where women are making statements that are typically male. I'll read one out. A woman cried in bed. So I said, oh man, not again. I turned around and just fell asleep. So if you let a man say that, it's standard everyday life. But if a woman says it, suddenly it's like, oops. And then I think we could now think about more such statements.
What I find funny about the statement, about the example you read, is really these cliche phrases for which men would now be punished, that if a woman says them, they are perceived as positive or amusing or charming.
Right.
If I as a woman, have to adopt more male attributes, we don't do it because it's so great, but out of a deficit, because we feel that otherwise you won't be heard, otherwise you won't assert yourself, and so on. But that costs us an enormous amount of energy. So when I come home in the evening, I'm exhausted. When I've had a day where I've only been sitting with CEOs and trying to explain or convey something to them, and then it's the nicest thing for me when I can come home and there's a man who takes the decisions off my hands, who is stronger than I am. I can finally not be the boss, but I can finally say, oh God, thank you. It's nice that you're here. It's nice that you protect me. It's nice that I finally don't have to be in control. So this primal principle of the man protecting the woman is still highly attractive. It has just shifted a bit in terms of where and how it takes place, but we still long for it, perhaps more strongly than ever before.
By the way, I feel exactly the same way in such a situation. And when there's a caring woman at home, that was nice too. That was nice too. Who then cooks like that? I think we're making a lot of enemies right now. We're currently reversing societal development, which we don't want to do. But somehow nature has also, provided its templates there. Yes. By the way, there's another hashtag called man in female fields. Really illuminated from the other side. That's it for today's show on the topic of learning to love coincidences, serendipity. I hope we were stimulating. I hope we were inspiring. And I hope that we all learn to incorporate chance into our planning, at least for 20%. And then we get along much better with Trump, Scholz, and co. Just much better. Thank you and see you next time.
Bye. In the context of our ongoing live discussion, could you provide a detailed explanation or description of a particular location or environment where you would typically say that I am involved in performing various activities or tasks that are related to fieldwork or practical hands-on experiences?
Eating habits. Okay, so Charlene, it must be said, is a carnivorous plant. So if you want to make her happy for all clients who will ever deal with her, give her meat, no matter in what form, very quickly, down to the last bit.